everyone, I'm Sabine, founder of Calvin's Free From Foods. That was inspired by our son Calvin, who has multiple severe food allergies. Our first product to market is an allergen-free, gluten-free and vegan coconut bread. And today we are talking with our nutritionist Cara Redpath, who is joining us now live about carbohydrates. Hang on, I just beam her in. Might have to hold this a little bit. For some reason, it doesn't want to do the clicky magic. I'll wave to you all. Okay, that clicky is working. And 1, 2, 3. I hope Cara is here. The magic of the internet is happening. And hello, sorry, I did not know what else to say. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm very well. It's raining where we are, and I'm pretty sure
it's raining
on your end as well. Yes, so I'm super excited about talking about carbohydrates, because I think most people, when they think of bread, they think of carbs at the same time, at least in my world. Maybe other people just think of no. And I hope that's what people think when they're eating our bread or think of our bread. But yeah, can you tell me what are carbs, please?
Yes, so carbohydrates are one of the 3 macronutrients. It's a term given to one of the 3 macronutrients in the diet. So you have protein, fat, and carbohydrates. And carbohydrates are basically, if we break them down to their most minute form, they're atoms of carbon and hydrogen and all the rest of it. So they've got carbon in them, which is why they're called carbohydrates. Other than that, though, they break into 3 categories. So dietary carbohydrates contains sugars, starches, and fiber. So that's where the confusion comes in. They're all part of the carbohydrate family. It's just they contain starches, sugars, and fibers. So sugars are carbohydrates in their most simplistic form, and they are the short chain carbohydrates that break down really fast in the bloodstream. The second one, starches, go into the digestive tract and take longer. They're long chain carbohydrates. They take longer to be digested, and they'll eventually break down into glucose maybe a couple of hours after, say, a sugar would. And then you have fiber, which actually remains undigested in the human body. I describe it as the brush that goes through the intestine, doing good while it brushes you out. So it provides a fertilizer for live bacteria to grow on, so your probiotics essentially. So fiber is there to support the gut microbiome and provide dietary fiber for excretion. So that's the 3. And then ultimately what carbohydrates are there for and why humans need them is they provide us with energy. So all carbohydrates except for fiber break down into glucose, and glucose then goes on in the Krebs cycle, which is this energy cycle within the body. We all learned the Krebs cycle in human biology at school. So it goes into the Krebs cycle to make ATP, which is what powers your cells. So yeah, that's a long-winded explanation for what carbs are there.
I think a lot of people, when they hear carbs, they just think of wheat or of potatoes, but not really what it actually does. And are there actually any good or bad carbs, or do they just all?
Yeah, so the good and the carb debate rages on. So I like to look at carbs as processed carbohydrates or refined carbohydrates, and unrefined carbohydrates or complex carbohydrates. There's lots of terminology there, whichever word you want to use them. Basically what it means is refined carbohydrates are carbohydrates with the fiber taken out with them, and quite often the starch taken out with them, so they're just sugar. Added to that, you could have a carbohydrate with another sugar added to it. For example, a cake is a carbohydrate with more sugar added to it. Unrefined carbohydrates or complex carbohydrates are more starch-based carbohydrates, more fiber-based carbohydrates that still have the fiber in them. And so the transit of them breaking down into glucose and hitting your bloodstream is slower. If you have too much glucose from carbohydrate, you will have a blood sugar spike. So your blood sugar should be kind of waving along like this as the day goes. If you have a cake or a piece of toast or something like that that's really, really refined, you'll get this massive blood sugar spike, and then insulin will have to come in, and then there's usually too much insulin is secreted because there was too much carbohydrates there in the first place, so it gives you this kind of dip, which is this like energy low, and then you'll need more sugar to bring yourself on. Yeah, exactly. So with a unrefined carbohydrate or a complex carbohydrate with the fiber still in it, it slows the transition down. So you get less glucose being released into the bloodstream, you get less of this dip, you get less of that glucose being stored as fat, because excess glucose will be stored as fat. And so the body can just kind of go on with its status quo as is.
Okay, and so how does the customer know what's good for them?
Yeah, so usually you would always be looking for a unrefined or complex carbohydrate, but the label won't tell you that. So the labels usually are designed to be misleading to the customer, just from a marketing point of view. It makes good business sense. So what to look out for on a label is, where is the fiber, how much fiber is them, because labels have to disclose how much fiber is in a product. So you will know whether or not the carbohydrate they're using is refined or unrefined if there's a lot of fiber in it, and if it's not added fiber, if it's just fiber as part of the whole. You will also know by looking at the amount of protein and fat in the product, whether or not the product is balanced. So a higher fat and protein ratio will mean whatever glucose is released from the refined carbohydrate will be tapered by the fat and the protein. So that's a good way to look at it. Likewise, if you can recognize the ingredient. So for example, if it says coconut flour, you know, okay, I know what a coconut is. It's an unrefined carbohydrate. I know exactly what that is. Or for example, if it says potato starch, you know that the potato starch is refined in of itself, because a potato is a refined carbohydrate. So you know right then that's a refined carbohydrate. So it's kind of using your critical thinking brain and going, okay, I can see that ingredient. It's showing me the ratio of carbs there. But what is the original carbohydrate? Is it flour? Is it rice? Is it coconut? Is it potato? What is it? So for example, if it's brown rice flour, that's going to be less refined than white flour. So it's just kind of using your brain that way. But there is, other than those kind of helpful tricks and hints and just knowing what you're about, it's hard. Labels are designed to be misleading, unfortunately.
Yeah, we almost need to be an expert to know. And with our bread, with Calvin's good free from foods bread, so what would you say with our coconut flour, because we have just quite a few ingredients and very high in fiber. 100 grams has 17 grams of fiber. How would you explain that to a customer?
Yeah, so Calvin's Good Food is fabulous because it is an unrefined carbohydrate source. It's from coconut. It also contains its own fiber and also added fiber from the psyllium husk. So it's a high fiber product. So right away you're seeing that's an unrefined carbohydrate. That's a complex carbohydrate. And then if you look at the fat ratio and the protein ratio, if you look at how much fat's in the product, it's really balancing it out, because it is a keto and paleo product. There is a lot more fat in it than your average bread. So it's more balanced, it's more tapered. You will not get the same blood sugar spike or the same fat storage from a slice of Calvin's Good Food.
Oh, right. Thank you for explaining that so well. And thank you to everyone for listening to us today. And it's just wonderful to see people tuning in. And we chat more next week. And I think enlighten people a little bit more. I always feel smarter listening to you, Cara. Thank you so much.
All right. Lovely to speak to you, Sabine.
Lovely to speak to you soon. Bye.